Credit card applications 101. So how to properly apply for business credit cards. So we know exactly what makes your FICO score, which banks to build relationships with, and what cards we want, and all the way down to what the bureaus these banks are actually going to be pulling from. So now it's time to do the actual application itself. So in this video, I'll be walking you guys through step-by-step process of the do's and the don'ts of applications. Let's get into it. All right, guys, let's get into how to actually apply for these credit cards. So the strategy is pretty, you can do this for personal or business credit cards. It kind of goes through all of them. But the main thing to know is I highly recommend before applying for any sort of cards, you create an account with them before applying, especially with these top tier cards. So with American Express, you'll want to have an account with them. I actually already had some business credit cards with them before. I created my personal credit with them. So that was actually a mistake I made. So now I'm kind of learning from it. And so I already have accounts with them. So I've already built up that relationship. Now, the other thing too, I highly recommend is using referral links anytime you can. So if you have any friends or the referral links that I provide, I highly recommend you using those because this builds more trust with the banks and increases your approval odds. So for somebody like, for example, if you were to use one of my referral links, they're going to see that, oh, Miggles already spent a lot of money with this bank. If he's referring somebody else, they're probably going to be bringing in a lot of business to us as well. So go through the referral links, and there's usually a sign-on bonus or some sort of rewards for you and the other party. So highly recommend doing that. But first thing you got to do is, obviously just simply type in on Google the exact card you want, or just explore. I already have that window popped up. Now, we'll go through this application together. I'll literally walk you through this. A lot of this is going to be basic information. I'm not going to show you all my information on this, but pretty basic stuff. Now, when it comes to filling out these applications, it's really important that you are consistent with your address. And what I mean by that is a lot of times, let's just pull up Experian. Actually, I don't want to show you guys my address. But on these credit bureaus, it'll show up multiple addresses of potentially where you've lived. And the more you move around, the more addresses that are going to report on your credit bureau. And to banks, you look a lot more riskier. And the reason because of that is being in credit repair with banks. I mentioned it earlier with credit repair. If you're able to get old addresses removed, it makes it a lot harder for banks to track down that debt to you if it's no longer reporting on that credit bureau, in case if you were to default. So if they see you moving around or if you have too many addresses, they aren't going to trust you as much. So make sure you're consistent with your addresses. And if you do have a bunch of addresses reporting to your credit bureaus, then in the credit repair section, we talk about how to get those addresses removed. So you should be good to go. On any of your applications, if you apply with American Express and apply for another card later, make sure you're using the same address. And another thing when it comes to addresses is, let's say, right now I'm out in Indianapolis, but my home address that's reporting on Experian is my address out in California. So if banks see me applying for a credit card and I'm saying I'm from California, but they could see on my computer that I'm applying from Indiana, there's a good chance that they might even deny the application because they might think it's fraud. So to avoid that, use a VPN closest to your city if you're applying out of state or and especially out of country from your home address, or else banks will flag it as fraud. So for me, I have a VPN, set the VPN as close as possible to Bakersfield, California. And from there, and then I'll want to apply so I can avoid any hassles with potential fraud. Now, the other thing too is, right, we got the addresses, we know how to fill that out. You're going to put your social, all this. When it comes to total annual income, so include all income available to you, income, wages, alimony, child support. So when it comes to income, the higher the income you report, the more credit limits you're going to get. And odds of getting approvals are going to be a lot higher. So when we're putting in our annual income, we're going to want to be realistic with this, but also at the same time, we want to be optimistic on what you expect to make. You know, for me, every year I'm working, like honestly, every day, every week, every month, I'm increasing my income because I'm constantly learning. It's not the same as it was last year, let alone last month. I'm continuously investing in my knowledge, making more money from my job, different businesses, side hustles. So I want to be optimistic. And a lot of the times, this is more of like kind of like an estimated annual income of what you expect to make. So again, be optimistic, but also be realistic. You don't want to overstate things too much, because then if you do, then they may red flag your account. Something to note is when it comes to annual income, I've seen this with other people. It's not really that common, but usually if you're putting your stated annual income, anywhere, below or at $250,000 a year, there's not going to be any sort of documents check. They're not going to require any sort of financial review. But if you aren't making 250 exactly, and you put something like 300, there are some odds where they'll actually do a financial review. So if you are making 250K a year already, then that's totally fine. Put that. But if you're having to be optimistic, just be a little wary. If you do get in trouble for, again, don't overstate things. Just be optimistic. If you can get in trouble, but not really. Like I've seen people who, overstated things and they didn't really get in too much trouble for having that. So income wasn't that big of a deal. Sometimes what might just happen is they'll either shut down the card or lower the limit on the credit card, but there's not really any legal recourse. But again, I'm not recommending, be realistic on these and optimistic as well. So that's a big thing. So address, income, again, be consistent with all the information. So if you're applying for multiple cards, again, with a bank, record in an Excel doc of the date that you applied for the card and all the information you put on that application, so you could keep referring back to it for later dates. Because let's say you applied for 3 cards with Amex. On one application you put you're making 200, the next one you put 250, and then the other one 300. You definitely don't look like a trustworthy person, and they're going to be raising some red flags on the account. So be careful with that. Lastly is if you're not immediately approved, sometimes that just means you either got denied or it's not an automatic approval. What you'll want to do is call the reconsideration line to get it overturned. This is not uncommon to get denied and have to go through the reconsideration line. That is totally something normal. That's happened to me a couple of times, and I've been able to call, get it approved and, even double, triple, even quadruple sometimes the credit limit after they initially denied me. So sometimes why that happens is the bank's algorithm will deny due to there being so much bank fraud. So they always just want to make sure they get some extra verification. When you do the reconsideration, they might just ask you a couple questions just to verify your identity, get some clarity to make sure that you actually applied. But honestly, it's not that big of a deal. I'll give you an exact script on how to handle reconsiderations in a later video. But that's it when it comes to applying. know those key tips when it comes to applying for credit cards. I'm actually going to apply for this card here in a second. I'm just not going to do it in front of you guys because it has a bunch of personal information. But this is how you guys do it. And I'll be looking forward to talking and seeing you guys in the next one. Peace.